Hi, good morning. It's so good to do this offline. I've been doing this online a lot. So it's nice to be among people, As journalists, that's what we do. We are in the middle of people, we are among people, we are on the ground. So, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. There will be a lot of, very quickly, how many of you are journalist students here? If you're going to be journalist, you're going to have to be a little bit more outgoing than that. So at least raise your hand up high. Okay, come on. Oh, that's it? Oh, okay, awesome. So you're going to hear a lot about, the theories of journalism, the philosophy of journalism, and media theories, mass communication theories, all of that in your lectures. But, what I wanted to bring to you today is, with a lot of humility, whatever experiences that I have had on the ground, whatever I have seen journalism as, and in the last five plus years, almost 6 years now, I have been able to see a lot of what the media industry is all about, a lot of what journalism in India really is all about in this day and age. The very first idea of journalism came from the Forum of Rome, called Acta Dura, and it roughly translates into the Daily Act. And it was a metal blob that had been hung on the Forum of Rome to basically educate people as to what had happened on the day before. Since then, this was in 59 BC sometime, and since then to today, we have taken large, huge moon steps and evolved so much in the field of journalism. We have seen a level of democratization of the news with the digital media and the internet. So much has changed. And that is why today, I want to speak to you about the good, the bad, the ugly, and oh God, so ugly side of journalism. Because we have seen good journalism. Today what we hear when we talk about journalism, we do have this tendency to diss it. We do have a tendency to disregard it and say that, media bika hua hai. And I want to talk about all of that with you. But I will first talk about a little bit of my own experiences. In a very young age, I have been, grateful enough to have been given the chances to cover important issues right from Jammu and Kashmir, to be on the ground to cover the abrogation of Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir, to be there in a place in Sabrimala during the time that the Supreme Court verdict had come out and women journalists were being beaten black and blue because that was the entire issue, that women were not being allowed to go inside the premises of the Sabrimala temple, the Ayyappa temple. From covering the international border in Gujarat with Pakistan to covering the elections in Assam. And the investigative stories that I have been fortunate enough to be doing has a large spectrum, from systematic oppression of the ST and ST community in Rajasthan to investigating into the top cops of Mumbai who have been covering up extortion and fake encounters. So this is a spectrum of journalism that I want to put in front of you today, because you are budding journalists. And even if you're not journalists, I think journalists are people who are there among the people. They are the people who are on the ground. They know what the reality on the ground really is. So anybody and everybody needs to know a certain level of things about journalism in particular. That is what I want to do, intend to do today while speaking to you, because what I want to do is de-glamorize journalism for you. Even today, what happens is because I come on TV so much, I do get recognized. There is a level of glamour factor to it. People look at me and they think, oh, she comes on television, it's such an amazing thing, it's such a glamorous job to be doing this. But it's really not. I have spent 2 days without food and water while we were covering floods in the pockets of rural Gujarat, where in the floods, in fact, a couple of years back, when more than 200 people had lost their lives in these floods. That is not glamorous. And I have also been there, I think a couple of years back, 2 years back, if I'm not wrong, in Baroda when flash floods had come on, and Vishwamitri River there. There's a river there where there are a lot of crocodiles there, and I remember walking neck deep water on my second day of the menstruation, and with my camera person there. All of these things, this is a picture that I want to put in front of you because these are not glamorous aspects of the industry. This is what really happens behind the camera, behind the scenes. The journey from the inception of a story idea to me standing in front of the camera and talking about it is a long one, and it's not a glamorous one. I was there during the time that the migrant crisis was going on a couple of months back, in fact, during the first wave of the COVID pandemic. And and that was the first time that I was lathi charged upon as well. I still have a mark of that lathi on my right thigh. I was there during the migrant crisis. There was stone pelting going on between the migrants and the police officers. And I got stuck in the middle of all of that. So I want to put this kind of picture in front of you to show you that, this is not always glamorous. This is not always as amazing as it looks on camera. That's the video was amazing and all, but it's a very small part of what journalism really is. I think there are a lot of perils to the industry as well today. This right from the very thing that we have now started using in the common conversation, which is fake news, which is with the democratization of the news, it also has, it is a double-edged sword, because of which now we also see the flip side of it, that there are a lot of, there's not a lot of cross-checking of facts when people are breaking a news, so to speak. There's a WhatsApp university, which is very prevalent. People think that every forward on WhatsApp is verified. And it's one of the perils that we as journalists face, because we have to be on the ground and we have to be cross-checking each and everything that comes our way before we put it out for the people. So that is one of the perils. That is one of the worst things that we have seen in journalism, because even during the pandemic, while covering COVID pandemic, when there were lines of ambulances outside civil hospital, when there were people who were literally gasping for their breath, there were people who were struggling to get a bed, we were covering all of that. And this was the time when the normal people were sitting in their homes because of the lockdown. But of course, the television sets were on. And we had to be on the ground. We had to be covering what really was happening on the ground in the pandemic. These are the things which are not glamorous. And at the same time, we had journalists at that time as well who were not cross-checking everything that they were breaking. They were not reporting on a lot of things. In fact, COVID deaths were being reported on as a cricket score. It was the most insensitive period as well that we saw as a humanity, and also as the fraternity of journalism as well. So that's, I think, another one of the perils, because I think we have desensitized ourselves so much that we do not take a second to understand that these are people that we are reporting on. That is another side of journalism that I want to bring to you, because as a woman on the field, my experience of journalism has been very different from, say, a very privileged man who would be on the field, because I have to cover hardcore beats like crime and politics and finance, which are usually considered as hardcore, and a young woman specifically is not always taken very seriously in these kind of beats. So I've had to also had my own problems or hindrances that I've had to face while I have been on the field, right from politicians not taking you seriously to seeing a systematic covering up, in fact, of rape cases in Rajasthan, and trying so hard not to be triggered by it. I was in Rajasthan, I remember, a couple of months back, and I was doing a lot of stories of the rape victims and rape survivors, and I was investigating into the systematic covering up by the police officers of these rape victims and rape cases. And I had to basically interview all these police officers, have a very candid discussion with them, and to hear them talk about there are women who just make these things up. Actually, rape कुछ होता नहीं, ये लोग ऐसे ही बना देते हैं. So when you are on the ground, you're a woman of the society, and you're on the ground and you see these things, it really takes something away from you, because it really makes you question the kind of society that we're living in. And these are the things that probably a male reporter or somebody who has a blind spot for these kind of things, or a very insensitive way of reporting, would probably look over and probably not even question. So I think desensitization of reporters on the ground is another one of the perils that we have seen in the industry. So specifically, I also want to talk to you about the media conglomerates and how there are people who think that it is the advertisers who decide on the content of the media, which may be true, and it also may be something that, as a budding journalist, makes you feel like you are powerless in this, that you can't really do anything about this. But I want to leave you with something very optimistic, because there's a statistics that I came across a couple of days back. Did you know that there are only 3% of the Indian population that is actually on Twitter? Did you guys know this? I'm expecting an answer. No? Okay. All right. So what it does is that it creates our own echo chambers. We look at Twitter for news feeds. We look at Twitter to form our own opinions. But we are in such a vacuum of an echo chamber that we think or we perceive that is the reality on the ground. Now, what about the 97% of the people which is the rural India, the masses, that is actually not on social media, the ground reality of things? So I think as a journalist, or even as a citizen, when you consume news, because as you are students of any discipline, you're going to have to consume the news as well. You're going to have to consume content. I think you have to be very, very cautious in terms of what kind of content that you choose to consume. Because yes, in the Constitution, we have Article 19 as freedom of expression and speech. But at the same time, we also have Article 51, subclause H, which talks about developing a scientific temper for yourself, which means not to just take in whatever information is thrown at you, but to also exercise your own conscience, to exercise your own scientific temper and understand whether or not this is there is a logical sense to this, and to also cross-check whether or not this is the right kind of news or not. So coming back to the echo chambers, I think this is something that each and every one of us needs to do right now. Because of today's political climate, or really anything, we do not confront ourselves with something that does not agree to our own opinions. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is called a confirmation bias. And I think is a number one killer of a good journalist. And I think that's one of the biggest perils of journalism today, is that we are not confronting our own confirmation biases. I think we are just living in our own echo chambers. We are consuming the content that we think agrees to our own opinions. We are not confronting the fact that we might be wrong. We're not introspecting that there might be something, that our own opinion might be ill-formed, or there might be a time now to change that opinion. So I think as journalists and as citizens of the world, in fact, I think it's very, very important in today's day and age to keep confronting ourselves, to keep asking ourselves, and to keep breaking our own echo chambers. Thank you. Hello, yeah. So you're asking me how to kind of
yes,
navigate from the traditional media houses to the
yes,
digital platforms, perhaps.
How should somebody wanting to be a journalist navigate through this polarization? How should one pick and choose?
I think it's a very subjective thing for a budding journalist, because of course the traditional media has its own pros and cons to it. And I think in today's age, I think it's an amazing new thing that we have seen, the democratization of the news in terms of the digital platforms coming up. And I think it does offer a lot more freedom to a budding journalist because you have print there, you have videos there, you can do a lot of content there as well in terms of whatever stories that you want to do. I think there are a lot less red tapes, so to speak, for a journalist when they are starting something in digital. So I think you have to introspect as to what you really want to be doing as a journalist somewhere down in your career. If this is something that's you just want to get an experience of traditional media, then I think you take an experience from all kinds of media. Do TV, do paper, do digital, do radio. I think, take learning experiences from all of these. I think all of it has to teach you something.
All right. Khushi, I believe you have a question.
I wanted to start from the very start, ma'am. So, how do you find journalism, or like, why journalism? Means I've been through your profiles. You worked as a life insurance agent. You worked in marketing. So these things, even though they are field work, they are ground work, and so is journalism, but they are very diverse. You come with such diverse professional background. So I wanted to know your journey, entering into journalism.
That's a very interesting question, actually. I didn't know you were digging so deep in my profile. Yes, in fact, I'm still a certified life insurance agent. I think I can scam people if I want to. But no, I was actually I have a commerce background. I did my BBA in economics and finance and entrepreneurship, in fact, from Ahmedabad University. And I have actually not studied journalism formally. Whatever I have learned on the field, but I have started very young. I had started very young. In my second year of college, I had come out and started interning at this newspaper called DNA newspaper, which existed here before in Ahmedabad. And in fact, I had gone there to just, talk about some products of my father's company. And I sat there and I told them, please hire me as an intern. And without you doing that, I'm not leaving this office. And that's how I started. I had no background, but I worked really hard. I was on the field the entire time. I was an intern, but I was working as though I was a full-time employee. And 2 weeks later, they offered me to be a freelancer. And that's how I did my college, because I finished my third year of college while I was freelancing with the newspaper. And then, of course, Republic happened, and I have not looked back since then. But you're right, it has been a very diverse journey. But journalism is something that I've always wanted to do, be in the middle of people, to be on the ground, to report on what's the truth. So, yeah.
All right. Ma'am, you also referred to the unfortunate dichotomy between speed and accuracy, particularly when it comes to television coverage. So, what checks and balances do media organizations have in place to ensure that in the pursuit of speed, you don't compromise accuracy?
Well, I think it's very important in the field of journalism to keep that in mind, because I think in this rat race of breaking things first, to break the news to be the first person to break that news, I think sometimes accuracy gets compromised. And I think as a journalist, that is your duty to make sure that you do not put out information that might be wrong. Because you're talking to millions of people, you're not just talking to one person. Say, for example, while I was reporting on COVID, like I mentioned, there was not a lot of fact-checking going on in COVID, specifically because a lot of journalists were also refusing to be on the ground. Of course, it was a very difficult time, and it was the lockdown, and people had their own paranoias to be outside. But we were on the field, and we were reporting from the ground, from the hospital wards, COVID wards. So I think that is your duty as a journalist, to be on the ground and to fact check all of it. But coming to your question, I think in television specifically, it is not just the reporter who can go rogue and break something on TV. Say, for example, I want to talk about something of an information piece that I have gotten and I want to break that. That goes to the desk first, then that goes to the editors then, and then they decide whether or not they want to break it. The graphic teams get involved, the input desk, the output desk. There are a lot of teams that go behind this entire, the TV channel to be functional. So I think there are a lot of red tapes in those terms to cross-verify your information. So I think even after that, if you manage to kind of get wrongful information out, then that's really on you.
Adding on to Sir's question, ma'am, we really, as you explained, it's very clear that verification, then taking right sources and quoting your information gets, like a staple for journalism. However, a very interesting observation that I've seen and a fact that not many talk about openly is about the not questioning media. Journalism really at core comes with questioning to find out the truth, to give the services back to society with what is right. And as its area spread more into human stories, it also delivers justice. Journalism has been, standing on this pillar ever since. My question to you comes about how questionable does media get when it stops questioning the authority?
I think that's a brilliant question. And, I think that's something that budding journalists really are or should be concerned about. In terms of what the fourth estate, so to speak, is all about. It is a watchdog of the polity. It is a watchdog of the government. It has to ask questions on the policy formation, on the governance, on each and every action of the politician and the government as a whole. So I think you have to have your benchmark very clear in terms of, and I'm going to talk about this as a very individualistic sense of the word. You have to keep introspecting as to where your benchmark lies. You have to keep introspecting in each and every story that you do. That what is the point of the story as to why you're doing this? How does it help? And is it important to do it? Say, for example, I do not believe in censorship, but I do think that there is something called self-censorship. In the sense that I remember I was covering a riot in Saraspur here area in Ahmedabad. And there was a lot of stone pelting going on. There was a lot of lathi charge going on. All of that was going on. There were mobs who were attacking private vehicles, all of that. And we were covering that with our cameras. But after a moment or so, we realized the more we panned our cameras, the more excitedly they started attacking the cars. They were playing for the cameras. So at that point, I decided, even though we were on air, we were live, we shut down our cameras because there was no point to it. Because everything that was happening was we were becoming a part of the problem in that scenario. So I think you have to keep introspecting as to what kind of story that you're doing and why you're doing it. In that scenario, I could have continued to show the violence, I could have continued to show the mob violence, and it would have gotten amazing TRPs. It would have gotten amazing viewership. But I think there is a sense of responsibility that comes with you when you're a journalist, and you have to sometimes switch off the cameras.
Okay, ma'am. Another aspect that we would like to talk about is the sensationalism that we see, particularly in television media these days. There seems to be a race for television rating points. And somewhere we seem to have been caught in this, what you'd call a TRP spiral. So what are your views in this, and how do editors look at the TRP game in general? If you could throw some insight on that, please.
Well, I think we are in a capitalist society, and I think we do work as a business model. So, of course, TRPs are important, but I am going to throw some light on the entire TRP, route of how it works and how flawed a system it is. And everybody in the media industry has known this. The TAM system of measuring the viewership, the sample size is too less, and the advertisers are controlled by it. So all of that is something that it is now coming in the spotlight, and we have accepted that there is something wrong with it. And we need to introspect again as to, with a better business model of it, to understand a better system of the TRPs as well. So I think that is a conversation which is now happening in the media industry at an editorial level, where they're understanding that the system is flawed and they need to change it, and they need to be a little bit more responsible about it. But at the same time, what you talked about, the TRP race, I think that's exactly what I said. This race to finish, first, to break something first, to be the first one with a piece of information. I think in that race, we sometimes compromise on accuracy. And I think that defeats your entire purpose of existence. So I think we need a level of introspection in terms of the kind of fact checking that we do and the kind of process that we follow. But as far as the TRP thing is concerned, I think that it's a very important conversation, and it is now starting to take place in newsrooms.
I would like to bring your attention to the previous answer, ma'am, you mentioned. Taking up from there, you mentioned about ethics. And, ma'am, while we talk about ethics, another very interesting thing that always pops up is ethical dilemmas. As journalism is directly related to the system and the citizens, there's a lot of ethical dilemmas and loopholes a journalist face. Which ethical dilemma is what you come across, the most, and how do you deal with it?
I'll share this with an experience of mine. One was, of course, I think the switching of the cameras bit of it. I think it was a dilemma, because there were people who were, shouting in my ear that we need to kind of cover something, and against all, directions, I chose to do that, which later on my team also realized that was the right thing to do, and, I did not lose my job. But at the same time, there are a lot of things that you see on the ground which are very different from what the editors perceive reality as. So you being the first person contact for any kind of information or anything really in journalism is something that you have to keep in mind, you have to bear in mind. I'll share an example of the time that I was covering the Triple Talaq issue when it was going on. And we were supposed to speak to all these young women. We were supposed to gather them and, speak to them about their own experiences. There was this one particular woman, I think she was 17 years old, and she had a baby. She had a 2-month-old baby as well. And we were taking all of these women live, and we were talking to them about their own experiences and everything. And I remember a lot of media houses were there and a lot of reporters were there interviewing her, and kept asking her to relive her entire existence, her experience of the way she was abused, the way she was abused by her husband, all of that, by her family, by society. And after the third or fourth interview, she started crying. And I noticed that as soon as she started crying, a lot of cameras started zooming into her face. And we were all in her face. The cameras were in her face, not just my channel. I'm talking about everybody being there. And, they were zooming in on her face. They were getting in her face. They were trying to get this picture of a young woman crying over the Triple Talaq issue. And before the interview, I had spoken to her and I had comforted her enough so that she would come on camera and share her story. And somewhere I felt responsible that I was making this girl cry. And as soon as this was happening, as soon as the camera switched off, she ran inside, and I went with her and I just hugged her and she cried. And I think that was a very distinct experience that I have felt, where I realized that I'm not just a journalist, I'm also a human being on the ground. So I think that always is an ethical dilemma that you have to see in terms of, if you look at a situation as a journalist, or do you look at a situation as a human first? So I think you have to decide what goes with your own ethics, your own philosophy of life.
Yes, ma'am, that indeed is true. Talking about experience, ma'am, I remember coming across some information. It stated very clearly that you were covering some riots, conflict between the police authority and the people on the field. In between the chaos, I think you too got hurt while covering this issue. And since you mentioned journalism is not that glamorized as a profession, there are things behind the camera that really captures the struggle within the soul and mind of a journalist. I want your take on this incident, and please cover more about journalism not being so glamorized as well.
You really stalked me well. I like that. So I mentioned that particular incident itself when I said that I was lathi charged upon for the first time as well. This was during the first wave of the pandemic, and the migrant crisis was going on. And near IIM, if you guys are familiar with the topography of Ahmedabad, near IIM there are these tin shelters where migrants, laborers in fact, stay. And this was the month of May, I think, so it was really hot. And to stay inside a tin shed, I mean, you can imagine the kind of heat that you would have to face. And at the same time, there were a lot of laborers who were leaving via trains. At that time, the trains were cancelled, everything was not functional, transportation was not functional. And these laborers were from Orissa, I remember, and they were trying to go via a train to Bihar, so that then from there they could leave for Orissa. And at that time, when they started marching out, these police officers came and they started, holding them off back again to the shelters. They're like, you can't leave, it's a lockdown, all of that. And in that agitation, the workers started pelting stones, which was a very normal reaction, I believe, because these were just people who were trying to go home. They did not understand what really was going on. And police officers started lathi charging upon them. And I was in the middle of this entire thing because I was too engrossed in taking a video. My camera person was there, but I was taking a video with my phone of bloody masks because some of the workers had been lathi charged upon and they were hit on the faces as well. So on the streets, you could see masks that were drenched in blood. So I was taking a video of those masks, and I was taking a video of police officers lathi charging on 12-year-old boys as well. And in that entire chaos, one of the police officers who was essentially saying कि हम इन लोगों को सबक सिखाएंगे, I came in the middle of this entire thing, and I was still taking my video and I was lathi charged upon. And of course, later on, the police officer realized that I'm from the media and he apologized, but it was too late. And I still bear a mark of that still there. So, I think we need to kind of lift the veil for, we as journalists, in fact, need to lift this kind of veil for the students, for the budding journalists, to show them that this is not all glamorous, that what actually happens on the ground. The kind of entire hardships that we face, the kind of work that we have to do behind the camera so that everything looks okay and glamorous on camera. So I think that's very important.
Great. Okay, can we have some questions from the audience? I believe we have some enthusiastic members. Yes, the gentleman in blue at the far end.
My name is Aditya.
Hi.
And I was a student of humanities. And I've been exposed to several political opinions after that. Before that, what I felt was that news media and media houses are a means to propagate concise information of detailed studies. But then later on, I found out that there are stories, there are agendas, there are opinions there. And as a student, I have been exposed to several opinions and my perspective are based on the opinions, right? And as you mentioned, echo, vacuum, we can see that the media houses play an important role in making the opinions of all the youth over all the world, right? So as sir mentioned that budding journalists navigate through the spectrum of journalism, I am a consumer. So how are the consumers supposed to navigate through the spectrum of different media houses and channels? How can we decide that there are several different media houses, which one is better and which one propagates truth?
So
If I'm not wrong, you're asking how to navigate and as a verdict journalist, right? As to how to find out where you want to be looking.
okay, awesome. So I think, yeah, you have something to add?
No. My question is not as budding journalist, but as a consumer. That as a consumer of television, while I'm watching things, how can I decode that whether the news channel, whatever it is propagating, is helpful to me or not? Or am I being fed lies?
Okay, that's brilliant. I love that question because I think as a consumer of news, I think all of us are consumers of news, any kind of content really. I think, as I mentioned, you have to exercise your scientific temper and have multiple sources for information that you get. In this day and age, you cannot only depend on Twitter and look at one tweet and say that, hey, I know everything about this, which is something that people do have a tendency of doing in these days, which I think is a very dangerous thing. But in terms of news channels and media, of course, there are facts there. And if you feel that, there might be a propaganda of a particular news channel, you are free to cross-check it from the source itself. You are free to look at other news medias and you are free to understand what actually is the truth. So you're going to have to do a little bit more research in this. You're going to have to be patient and read up a lot more in terms of not just relying on social media posts or not just relying on one bit or bytes of information. If you want to really understand something, if you really want to understand an issue, I think we as a society will have to develop a sense of patience so that we can read up a lot more on this in depth. I hope
yes.
that answers.
Who else? Any more questions?
As we all know that media is the fourth pillar of democracy, right? But people have recently started distrusting the mainstream media. That is going to affect our country as a whole in future. So how do you think we could tackle that? See, many mainstream media houses have been spreading fake news, spreading news that only gives them TRP and not focusing on the issues which are truly to be focused on. So how do you think journalism can help tackle that?
Could you repeat your question?
My question is,
The last one.
people have started distrusting mainstream media. So how do you think that the trust can be gained again? Because mainstream media is the fourth pillar of democracy, right? And it is very much needed in country like India, where rural people don't know कि कहाँ से और information collect कर सके. They have only one source, and that is the mainstream media, right? So how do you think people can start trusting the mainstream media houses again?
Okay, so I think what you're asking is the mainstream media is only sensationalizing issues and not really covering the actual issues. Is that what you're asking?
Many, not all of them, many of them.
Okay, so all right, that's a great question.
I think yes, there is, a level of sensationalization that we see across media platforms. But at the same time, I think there are real issues that are being covered by the mainstream media as well. It may not make it to the prime time, but it is still being covered. It may not be in your face all the time, and that's just the society that we're living in right now. I think you're going to have to go a little extra and see, there is content available. We do a lot of rural centric stories as well. I myself travel at least twice a month in the rural pockets of the state and make sure that there are stories from the rural India that make it to the mainstream media in my channel as well. So I think it's available, the news stories are there. It's not always in your face all the time. Say, for example, what might be in the prime time will be very different from probably the kind of news that you're talking about. So I think you're just going to have to go an extra mile and read up on these things. It's there. I assure you that it is being covered.
Thank you.
Okay, any more queries? Yes.
you earlier mentioned that only 3% of people in India use Twitter. So I would be fair to assume that it is 5% of people in India who literally cross-checked every fact and go deeper into politics, right? So where does the fate of political literacy lies? Because if this is the amount of people who are checking the source and actually are politically literate, then is election or the choice of election only apparent?
I'm sorry, there's an audio echo. I couldn't understand what you're asking.
All right. What I'm asking is that since only these many people are actually in-depth politically literate, for example, I never read Citizenship Amendment Bill. I only went through the headlines or the bullet points that I received from the news channels. So if majority of Indian public is having the same way of looking at things, then is the choice only apparent when we are giving votes in election? Because I don't think 5% makes a big deal when it comes to voting around the world.
Okay, I'll try to answer that as
best as I can. You're right that the 3% of the people are
Twitter and all of that. And yes, there are experts who are there with their own informed opinions about things. But at the same time, when you're trying to understand something, like when you're trying to understand a complex issue like the CA, NRCA, or NRC, or the abrogation of Article 370, or any number of legal aspects of things, you can't just rely on one opinion and think that that's a fact. I think that is a major blind spot that we have developed as a society, and we need to challenge that each and every day. Because you look at an opinion and you're perceiving that as a fact. You have to look at multiple opinions. That's exactly what I was talking about when I said you have to keep challenging your confirmation biases. If you consider yourself to be a right-winger, you must also look at content which from media outlets which are considered to be left-wingers. Keep confronting your ideology as well before you form a very cemented opinion about things. And social media, of course, is a great apparatus that can help you in doing that, but that in itself cannot be enough. I think you do need to kind of dig a little deeper and read up on things and understand the difference between a fact and an opinion, which I think we as a society are kind of losing sight of more and more each day because of the bit-sized informations that we get on social media. Yes, there are experts, and of course they have their own informed opinions about things. But you must also, if you're trying to form your own opinion, I think you must also look at a plethora of experts, which are, the content for which is available everywhere. So I think using social media for that, I think, is a lot more valuable, so to speak.